My name is Linda Tapp. I am president of Safety Fundamentals, which is an occupational safety, health, and consulting company. I've been an ASSP member for 34 years, a really long time. I'm a certified safety professional. I'm also a certified professional in talent development. I do a lot of consulting work for various industries. I've been in construction, pharmaceutical, chemical, hospitality, some federal government work. What I want to talk about today is a case study for an ergonomic evaluation that was done based on a risk management request from a large company with about 2,000 employees in multiple locations that was having some issues with strains and sprains. So about the company, it made vaccines, and if you know anything about vaccine business, it's very cyclical. So sometimes during the year they're very, very busy. Other times it's much slower. So this company had filling rooms, which is where they made the vaccines. And they noticed before the big production started that many of their employees were rubbing their elbows and their wrists and their shoulders after work had just started to get going. The company believed that that was an indicator that they were going to have injuries down the line, so they took the steps of implementing their risk management program. So a little more background about the company. They had to follow CGMP requirements, and if you know about the pharmaceutical industry, CGMP stands for Current Good Manufacturing Practices. And sometimes CGMP can almost conflict with safety requirements a little bit. So a safety professional might walk into an environment like this and see an easy fix, but it wouldn't comply with the other regulations. So it gets a little bit tricky in pharmaceutical sometimes. So some of the things that we would come up with to fix this may not comply with the other parts. So this company was a very strong believer, which is a great thing, in the systems approach as well. So if you make one change somewhere in the company, you had to make sure that it was in line with all the other types of operations and requirements that happened. So their overall risk management approach, they really believe that anytime there is a risk, there is a potential for adverse outcomes. So that's what spawned the whole beginning of this risk process. They hadn't had many injuries, but they knew that they were potential to have them come down the road, especially as busy season was about to begin. Their approach basically started with identifying the problem. And the work, you'll see some photos, the work involved a series of awkward postures, which did lead to aches and pains at the end of the work shift. So that's what the problem was, and that was how it was defined, and they were trying to find a solution to that problem. The assessment portion had to do with something called the ergonomic job measurement system, which is very much like a job hazard analysis, but it's based on ergonomics. And one of the key facts or priorities or benefits of an EGMS system is that it's objective, because someone can say, I believe this is risky, I believe this is unsafe, someone's going to get hurt, but if you have a numerical system and data, it's a lot easier to back it up and prioritize your actions. So that was a key part of their process. Also with the EGMS, you get a numerical number. So the company had pre-identified that their risk tolerance was anything that rated a high on this form would get immediate attention. They had already pre-established that, so the form was able to give them a number and help them direct their efforts in the right way. These are a few photos of the filling operations, and you can see it's a very tight spot. There are a lot of awkward postures. It's a really difficult job, honestly. Filling operators are pretty skilled. You don't want a lot of them out hurt on work. This shows you some of the tight areas that were in the workspace. So when you had more than one person in these tight spots, it was even worse. And you see that the reach on the right there is just a really, really not a good thing to do multiple times throughout the day. Another one there, it shows you how tight it is. During the evaluation process, there were also some unplanned findings, and this happens sometimes. We started seeing lots of trip hazards on the floor. And part of the pharmaceutical industry practices for this room was to use alcohol multiple times through each shift. And I'd say multiple times is every time they handled a tray of vaccines, they use the alcohol dispenser 3 to 5 times. So like multiple times, but that also gets on the floor. So in addition to the trips, they had alcohol sprayiness as well. So the strategy was to look at the options, and they came out of that measurement form, then set priorities, and then develop the action plan. And again, they really wanted to pay attention to any unplanned effects of the change or the systems approach once again. Some of the easy short-term solutions that they were able to implement were things as simple as changing the length of forceps from 24 inches to 18 inches. A very simple thing, but it reduced the length of the reach that they had to get to inside the machine. And it seems like a small distance, but it made a huge difference. Another very simple solution they were able to implement was to replace trash cans. And that sounds very simple, but their current trash cans did not fit under the counter of where they worked. So it took up more of that valuable floor space in a very tight area. So once they redesigned a narrower trash can, they were able to fit it where it made much more sense and reduced the stretches that they had to do. With the larger trash can, believe it or not, they had to twist and reach over their shoulder. And really, every time they used alcohol, they had to make this reach. So something as simple as replacing a trash can that fit was a very easy solution. Some of the longer-term ones that they did implement, probably after the first or second busy season even, because they were very big changes, were to remove one of the walls of this filling room, because the filling room is verified for certain space and airflow and lots of requirements that are set by these CGMP standards. So they actually removed a wall to make the area much bigger layout. They were able to change the tray size. And every one of these things may sound simple, but that all has to be revalidated and documented and tested with things like water runs, they're called, which is just a blank vaccine system that goes through the system. After the changes were in place, their next step was verification and further evaluation. And they would look at things such as data, benchmarking, injury reports to make sure that all of the changes they had put in place actually had taken place and people were using them as they were supposed to. So conclusion, again, a risk is a potential for adverse outcomes. That was this company's core belief. So if they had a risk, they were going to take steps to try to mitigate it before something happened. And they did identify that. They found aches and pains and they took steps to take care of what was needed. Some of the outcomes that could have happened were employee illness, injury that leads to higher expenses. People would lose time from work, increased overtime, which they didn't want either. Production delays, which would not be good during vaccine season by any stretch. And if you even stretch it out a bit, people that need those vaccines could be affected as well if vaccine production was down. So being proactive in their approach in managing risk, as well as their systems thinking, made their risk management program highly effective. So in the end, after this busy season, happy to say that there were 0 reports of injuries related to sprains and strains, all because they took this proactive risk management approach and used the systems thinking that they were so well known for.